In this video, you're going to learn about a block-in style called mass drawing. Put into its most simple terms, mass drawing can be described as the process of blocking in using shapes of value rather than lines. The result of applying this concept to your block-in drawings is that you will achieve a visual result to your block-in way faster and, frankly, probably have a little bit more fun doing so. Mass drawing is also the newest module in my block-in course. This course is designed to give you everything that you need to know and to practice about the first and most important stage in a drawing. Check the link in the description of this video to go directly to my website, where you'll find that and all the other courses at a discounted price. The first thing we want to know, of course, is the height versus the width. The model is a bit taller than she is wide. Just kind of took a few marks. One for the high point on the hair on the upper left, one for the high point on the hair on the kind of middle right-hand side. Then, of course, the bottom of the chin, which is almost all the way to the left side of the contour, and then another high point over here. So this more or less should define the space that this head is going to be occupied in. Let's get into the first essential aspect of what mass drawing does and what mass drawing is. I'm going to start to block in some of the large shapes of value. I'm really just drawing this left-hand contour. You can also picture, I think very, very easily, the relationship that this style of drawing has to painting. If you think of the width of maybe a number 10 flat brush, that's essentially what we're using to make this block in, right? Pretty broad brush, making broad strokes, and we're trying to simplify the subject, not through necessarily what the subject itself is, but essentially how the subject appears to our eyes. Right? This is the big distinction in between mass drawing and line drawing, as Harold Speed says. It's very much about how the appearance of the subject hits your retina. So it's not you trying to describe on a flat plane the three-dimensional feeling of what you're drawing. Here, we're really consumed only in expressing how that subject hits our eyes, how the values of it hit our eyes. How am I getting to these shapes, right? I'm squinting way down till I almost can't see the subject, right? I'm looking through my eyelashes and I'm trying to find what is the basic shape of light. And eventually, I'm going to use those shapes to help me bring about a more accurate sense of proportion. What's happening up until now? You can see that we've revealed already this light shape. This is a positive outcome. It's what we wanted to get to, because now, in a sense, the drawing really starts. And we're going to keep it this generic while we work on the proportions. So the things that I want to decide now are what are the key points that I want to kind of compare to each other, right? So I've decided that I think this point in the nose here is going to lead a kind of horizontal axis that I'm going to use to kind of compare other features to. To the ear, for instance, I think that in fact I've made two things happen. One, I think the angle of the nose is a bit wrong. And then I think I've also made bottom of the ear a little bit low. Now, something else is that the tip of the nose here is coming out a little bit too far to the left. And I think that I need to bring that in. So the tip of the nose roughly aligns with the edge of the chin. Now, top edge of the light shape of the nose, I think, is a very important landmark. So I'm going to impress that on the drawing a little bit further. This shape here, for instance, is a kind of beacon, point of truth to define where these other shapes should be. You can see, by the way, from how we're drawing right now, how much focus there is just on the raw shapes themselves. There's nothing about this really that is an eye yet. So let's pause for a moment and call this section of the mass drawing block-in complete. What you should have on the paper by this point is explicitly related to the title of this style of block-in. You want a mass of darks and a mass of lights. We want to have a base value and an accent value. Now, if you have all the variety in the world inside the values of your shadows, adding one more is not really going to show up all that much, right? Like I would say that this area is so full of variety that if I add another mark into it, it doesn't give us much impression of anything happening. However, this, which is at the moment relatively even, if I put a mark into that, it kind of stands out even when you squint down. Quick word of caution. It would be a mistake for any of your edges to become too strong, too hard, too crystal clear. If you come to that place, it implies a kind of definiteness, a kind of certainty, and that's not where we want to be right now. We want to be very flexible. Inside the shadow here, we find the outside corner of the mouth. And we can also determine a little bit the angle of the features. The head is tilted to the side, like this, and tilted a little bit back. You can notice that we're seeing a lot of the bottom plane of the nose. This means that the head is kind of tilting upward like this. We're seeing that bottom plane of the nose, and then the head is tilting to the side like this. Try to remember this. You are not making a high resolution drawing at this point, or really almost at any point in an exercise like this one. It's all really very low resolution, right? There's a lot of pixelation that you're dealing with. And it's not a bad thing. That is just the nature, certainly of mass drawing at this stage, but I would say mass drawing as a whole leans into that.
At this point in the drawing, we've advanced the values within the darks to include an accent value. The thing that I want you to remember when applying that, and I want you to go back and double check this in your drawing. When you squint down and look at the impression that your drawing gives you, do the two values that you're using inside your dark mass unify together when you squint down or separate? If you find that you have too much of a distinction in between those two values, now is the time to glaze over that shadow with your charcoal and make sure that you maintain a close relationship in between the accent value and the general dark mass.
Let's work on the nose a little bit. I'm going to bring out the nose in a way that I think goes along with the spirit of mass drawing. By that I mean, I'm not going to start to create like a full value nose, but I'm going to make that duotone nose that we're really all kind of chasing after at this moment. So basically I'm taking the bottom edge of the form of the nostril where that dark value starts to kind of peek out, and I'm using that as the basis for a dark valued shape. Now the nose itself, as it turns under, it naturally has this darkening of value. Some of it's shadow, some of it's very dark halftone. I'm just going to treat it as a uniform gradient kind of upward. So I'm just going to make sure it softens as it goes up. Then the nose is casting a shadow downward to the left. I'm going to unify some of that together. Let's go to using our stump. And then of course the philtrum has a plane shift which creates this little notch value that pokes out here. Now this space is a pretty nebulous one in the sense like it's hard to kind of grab a hold of because there's not really any strict value-based definition through there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of use a harder halftone edge to define a little bit the boundary of that shape. So it can help me visualize how much space I have out here. Let's talk about what is the weakness of this approach. Eventually, it's not too dissimilar to the visual approach to drawing is in that you have large areas of light that in fact don't have any structure inside of them. So one of two things happen. We start to integrate a lot of halftone values, which can be useful, but perhaps a little bit premature. Or we get these kind of floating edges that are too distant from each other to have a really great locked-in relationship. Because of that, eventually you'll want to be kind of drawing inside of this using hatch marks and notations to try to give you a feeling for where all of these forms are kind of pointing.
So let's call part 3 of this lesson finished, and I want to talk to you about a few of the things that we did here and where this should take us to in the next stage. By this point, you should have on your paper everything necessary to create an accurate likeness of this model. By that I mean, in the next stage of the block-in, you're not going to be adding a significant amount of new information. By this point in the process, you should have identified your shadow edge. You should have also implemented at least a binary edge quality, meaning is the edge of the meeting of dark and light values either soft or hard. There should also be just enough halftone and notations within the light shape to give us a sense of structure and form, though not necessarily something that has a full hierarchy of value, meaning the highlights shouldn't really stand out by this point. The values in the lights should be really unified as much as possible. As we come to the end of this project, I want to make a comparison to where we started. What you should see in the final expression of this block-in style is simply a more refined echo of what we established in the very first stage. There are a couple of things that we can see here that show what really make mass drawing tick. The most primary and powerful of those is a simplified and unified shape of value.
We're going to wrap up this video here. I hope you enjoyed the synopsis of this lesson. For a more in-depth deep dive into mass drawing with additional studies and content, check out the Block-In course right now.